What is the quintessential Sturgis motorcycle? Most people would say it's a Harley-Davidson chopper. Every year, somewhere around 500,000 bikers from around the world, most on Harleys, cram themselves into our little town for the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. 2 weeks of motorcycles, music, and mayhem. And for the most part, we locals love it. I've been coming to the rally for decades and definitely participated in my fair share of the debauchery. The rally is just a small part of what makes Sturgis Sturgis. Once all the Harleys are loaded up and headed out of town, the locals like to take things off Main Street and into the dirt. The Black Hills of South Dakota. Many locals, including myself, spend more time off-road than on the street. And they would argue that the quintessential Sturgis motorcycle isn't a Harley chopper, but something that can go off-road. But I asked myself, can't it be both? Enter the Gold Digger. The ultimate Sturgis chopper. A Sportster chopper that looks right at home at the Buffalo Chip during rally, but modified to handle the fire roads and mountain trails that I spend most of my time riding after the rally is over. I missed the break.
Cut.
With the exception of a couple of welds, the Gold Digger would be a pretty reasonable build for an intermediate wrench with a garage and a well-stocked toolbox. Is it practical? Not really. Does it look badass? Hell yeah, it does. Will it and myself stay in one piece on the trails? There's only one way to find out. But first, let's chat details. A dirt chopper, those two things are kind of a long way apart on the spectrum of motorcycles. But I knew it was a place I wanted to go, and I had to have a starting point. So I started rummaging around my garage, and I came across this 97 Evo Sportster motor they had. The history of the Sportster has a ton of dirt influence. And to me, it made the perfect platform to start with. I knew if I was gonna build a Sportster chopper, my first phone call had to be to the guys at Led Sled Custom in Ohio. They are the quintessential Sportster chopper builders, and they ride a ton off-road, so they would have exactly what I needed, and they did. Basically, we went with a 2-up stretch and a 2-out stretch and kept the stock rake. Oil tank comes with the kit, and it is basically ready to go. I had to do 0 fab work to that. Even comes with the stainless steel hardware. Super, super easy. And while I was talking to the Led Sled guys, I had to get a set of these wheels. It's their take on the classic Invader from years past, only much, much stronger. Out back, we went with an 18 by 130. That means that we can run adventure bike tires on the back of this, again, giving us a really wide range of dirt tires. I have a Bridgestone AX41 back there. I didn't want to put big fat trees on it. I didn't want to do like a wacky dirt bike front end. I wanted to keep this very classic looking. So I stayed with the 39mm front end. The lowers are actually off of my 89 FXR. But as you can see, I shaved the legs down here. Replaced the tubes. These are some DLC coated black tubes from Custom Cycle Engineering. I just really like the look. Raw aluminum Pro 1 billet trees. And then to top it off, Legends Axio kit. It's a chopper, so there's not a lot of suspension. I'm just kind of rounding out the front end. Put the RSD fork brace in there. Quite frankly, just because I like the way it looked. Time to move on to taking a look at my 25-year-old engine and drivetrain. I knew there was a 1200 kit in it, but it was tired. Who knows when it was put in there? So I replaced that with an S&S 1200 kit, put some Fueling 505, 515 cams in there. Basically, that's the biggest kind of cam setup I could put in this engine without modifying the heads or changing valve springs or something like that. Twin Tech ignition, that's key because things like raising the compression, changing our cam timing, things like that, this gives us a ton of adjustability to take advantage of those other hot rod parts we put in the engine. So we also needed to fuel it. So I opted for an S&S Super E. For the intake, I had to go with the classic S&S teardrop. Again, we powder coated this black to match what I was going to do with these engine covers. The engine covers were that just raggedy, raw aluminum that Harley used to put on the cheap Sportsters years ago. And I wanted a little bit of contrast here. So one of the last hills I had to climb as far as engine and driveline was exhaust. But I had this exhaust from my old flat track hooligan bike, put it on here, and it just fit absolutely perfect. Again, raw stainless kind of matched my choice to leave this frame raw. Just a very like workmanlike, you know, hardcore look. It was time to decorate my cake, and my cake needed to look like a chopper. You definitely don't want too big of a gas tank on a chopper. You don't want it so small you can't get anywhere. And then as far as like where to mount it is always kind of a weird thing. So bumping around the JMP website, this thing really spoke to me. It's got that kind of rounded alien head shape, as I like to say, offset gas cap, and it was Frisco mounted already. I had zero fabrication in the tank, just mounted it up on the frame where I wanted it, and I think it turned out perfectly. I had been carrying this fender around for over 5 years. This was off of an Indian Scout. I just shaved the mounts off, cut a chain clearance, and bam, we had a deal. What do we want to paint this? I had a really raw looking bike in the raw frame, so in my mind, if it's a chopper, it kinda has to be metal flake. So I got a hold of my buddy Danny Hendricks over in Sheridan, and he sprayed the most metal flaky of metal flake gold on this thing. I just couldn't be happier. It kind of really pulls out that yellow and black J&P theme as well, which I really like, and it sparkles. Choppers need to sparkle. Built-weld tracker high bars, threw a set of Torker grips on there, hardtail seat. I love the buttons, and I really, really like that shape. It just looks like a 60s or 70s chopper. Drivetrain, put the power to the ground, went with a chain, just because choppers should have chains. From there, we had to address a couple of electrical things, namely lighting and how we were gonna wire this thing. Obviously, there's no headlight up front, so I stole a page from the Led Sled guys, and I side mounted my headlight down on the bottom left side off the motor mount. But I didn't use just any old chopper headlight. I used a Denali LED headlight, threw a yellow lens in there just to kind of go with the flow of all of this yellow we had going. Now for that wiring, I used an M unit. It makes everything so simple and helps keep things compact. All the wiring is in there. I don't have any need for anything else. It only requires one circuit breaker, and it all fits in there really well. I always say choppers should be keys in the seat. Well, this one doesn't even have a key. We have a switch to arm it and a switch to start it on the other side. The last thing I had to come up with was a brake, because I don't have one on the front because chopper. So on the back, we had to have some pretty stout braking. Galfer wave rotor bolted to an invader, and that is being grabbed onto by a Performance Machine vintage caliber. It's a 4-piston caliber, so it provides us plenty of stopping power, no problem to stop this light little bike. Now it's time for the fun part, but I have a little bit of trepidation. I have no doubt I'll cool guy chopper down Main Street and have a great time. But how's this thing gonna do on the trails? There's only one way to find out. Let's go for a ride. Main Street Sturgis on a chopper. It is definitely a vibe. You see people turning and looking there, which is, you know, part of what you want. You build a cool bike like this, you want people to notice and appreciate it. It's a big part of choppering. Stance on this thing is rad. Very compact, kind of aggressive. I dig it. Not very uncomfortable, but you can definitely notice this is a hardtail, which is, you know, quintessential chopper. But all the little bumps and inconsistencies in the road are just coming right on through that frame with no suspension back there. Off-road, this may be a bit more dicey than I anticipated. All right, first time on the dirt. Let's see how she does. Pretty stoked about this. Come on, baby. Not bad, first impression, not bad. A little bit of a washed out road here. Oh, yeah, definitely feel it there. Front suspension working beautifully. There is no rear suspension to speak of, so we know how well that's working. Oh, man. Yeah, I dig it. Woo! Overall, fun factor is very high. All right, off the gravel road, onto some trails. Already big bump right here. And the Sportster motor, all kinds of grunt. It just rips through stuff. All right, that might be. Oh my God. All right, let's do it. This is something else. Oh my God, it's beating me to death. Oh my God.
the front end. Obviously it's a dirt-centric tire, but it grips pretty good on the front end. I mean, we got suspension up there that's working. All right, this looks like a fun section. Yeah, buddy. That's what I'm talking about. Throttle response is good. I mean, it just feels like a flat track bike. Yeah, get juiced up. All right, that was fun and terrifying at the same time.
So is the Gold Digger the ultimate Sturgis motorcycle? I think it's a pretty strong contender. This chopper looked badass rolling through town, and to my immense surprise, survived the trail test without a scratch.
Oh my God.
Sure, after riding her off-road long enough for the video guys to get what they needed, I felt like certain body parts were tenderized meat. But that shouldn't be the big takeaway here. The real takeaway from this experience is making something that shouldn't work actually work. And you'll never know if your idea will work until you give it a try.